right. One of my favorite guests is on. She's so many different titles she has. Caretaker of America's mental health, known as America's psychiatrist, forensic psychiatrist, expert witness, best-selling author of 4 books, 2 on terrorism and 2 on relationships. But I wanted to talk to her today about a common fear people have, and that is fear of flying. And we've had 2 incidents this week, tragic incidents, that certainly is going to exacerbate those fears. So let's bring on the expert, Dr. Carol Lieberman, with us. Hey, Dr. Carol, how are you doing?
Hi there. Fine, thank you.
Thanks for being with us. This is a common fear, isn't it? Fear of speaking, public speaking, fear of flying. Isn't this one that a lot of people have?
Well, fear of public speaking is supposedly the biggest fear, but there are a lot of people with fear of flying, too. 25 million Americans, adult Americans, supposedly are how many people who have fear of flying, which is also called aviophobia and aerophobia. And what it is, it's an irrational fear of flying because a lot of people know or have been told that flying is actually the safest form of transportation. Now, of course, when we have what just happened in the last week, between the Black Hawk and American Airlines and now the one in Philadelphia, those crashes are particularly important or particularly effective in causing or increasing fear of flying because they are such bizarre, such unexpected, shocking kinds of crashes. It wasn't just a plane. You think fear of flying. Plane coming in for a landing and crashing. But I mean, the chances of a Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines flight crashing, and of course they're all being so secretive about a lot of the information. And then the one in Philadelphia where it was a little girl or a child who had just had her life saved at Shriners Hospital. Right. Then she's flying home, yay, they saved my life, and the plane crashes. Really sad.
Unbelievably tragic. And, of course, as you're right, people need more information, and that's going to be forthcoming. You say this is irrational because this is the safest mode of travel, correct? And there hasn't been a plane crash in our country in 16 years, if I'm not mistaken, a commercial airliner.
Well, and then, of course, the one people, naturally you think back to 9/11. With those crashes, that actually started a huge rise in fear of flying. And that was one of the first things I did as the terrorist therapist. I created an audio video program that airlines played in flight, which was really visualization, helping people to relax in a 3-step kind of program with visualization, imagining things, visualizing things. That's one of the treatments for fear of flying. And it's really been the other thing. Let me just say a couple of other treatments are individual therapy, of course, group therapy. What's interesting is some airports have group therapy for people with fear of flying. Of course, it's to their benefit. And they have a desensitization program, which is where you first you may see pictures of airplanes, you may see a movie about an airplane, you may walk into an airplane. All these things gradually, and with relaxation exercises, gradually getting you desensitized to the fear of being on the plane and flying.
Here's my view. We have about a minute or so left, Doctor. I think it could be a lot about a loss of control because people like to be, when they're driving, they're in control. When they go about their day, they're in control. But when they're flying, they cede that control to a pilot who's, got their life in his or her hands. So is that part of it here that, you have to give up control and trust that you'll get there safely?
Yes, that is the major part. So people who have control issues to begin with, aside from flying, they are the most likely to have a big fear of flying. People who are obsessive compulsive, who need to be in control, it's very hard for them. Also, people who have claustrophobia, fear, that's a different phobia, but interacts with fear of flying, and that people who are afraid of being in a confined place, all these other different kinds of phobias can interact with this and also add. And these days, the way people are acting in airplanes, it's not unreasonable.
Well, that's a whole. We're going to do a whole nother segment on that, because when I was a kid, we used to dress up. It was a big deal. You went to fly. You wore your Sunday best. It was an experience. Absolutely. Now, I mean, they dress worse than they do at Walmart to go fly. I mean, it's just. Anyway, that's a whole nother segment. Dr. Carol, thank you very much. Appreciate all your insights and, of course, your great work. And it's always a pleasure to have you on the program.